Okay, picture this. You are at the absolute finish line of a grueling, years-long divorce battle. It's been emotionally draining, unbelievably expensive, just an exhausting marathon. But finally, you can see the end. The final trial is just 18 days away. Just 18 days, that's the countdown. 18 days until it is all finally over, and everyone can hopefully start to move on with their lives. I mean, after years of fighting, more than 20 different court hearings, 2 full appeals, this bitter war was finally about to end. You can almost feel the relief in the air. But then, what if, at the very last second, one person turns around and demands a complete do-over? To scrap everything and start from square one? Well, that is exactly what happened in a recent Australian family law case, and it's a story that is just wild. Yeah, with less than 3 weeks left on the clock, the wife, in this case, dropped what you can only describe as a procedural bomb, trying to blow the whole thing up right before the finish line. So let's get into the specifics. The case is Hopkins and Elliott, and this all went down on March 5th, 2024. The core issue for the judge was this 11th hour request to hit pause on the final trial. But we're not just talking about a simple delay here. The stakes were huge, potentially throwing out 2 entire years of painful, expensive legal work. Now, to understand why this all happened, you really have to try and see it from the wife's perspective. You see, in her mind, she wasn't trying to sabotage the process. She saw herself as a victim, desperately fighting for justice. And this right here perfectly sums up the 2 completely opposite realities of this case. On one side, you have the wife's story. My husband is a liar, he has tricked the court, and I am a victim of his deception. Then, on the other side, you have the husband's story. She is abusing the system with delay after delay, and this has to stop. And her demands, wow, they were not small. We're talking about delaying the trial forever, basically, overturning decisions that were already made, and demanding the husband fork over $100,000 for her new lawyers. This wasn't a tweak, this was a demand for a complete reset of the entire game. And look, she didn't just show up with an idea. She came armed. She filed a massive 65-page legal statement with, get this, nearly 1,500 pages of attachments. It was a literal mountain of paper, all designed to prove her husband had been lying about money for years. The strategy was pretty clear: overwhelm the court and force them to hit the brakes. Okay, so that's her side. But from the husband's point of view, this wasn't some noble search for the truth. It was just the latest exhausting battle in a long, painful, and very expensive war. And when you look at the history here, you can kind of see why he felt that way. The court documents themselves describe this whole process as torturous. I mean, since 2021, they'd been dragged through over 20 court hearings, 10 different mini applications, and 2 full-blown appeals. For him, this was just one more delay tactic in a long line of them. Now, here's the kicker. The wife's whole case was built on this idea that the husband was hiding a bunch of money in his company. But a neutral accountant appointed by the court had already dug into it, and the finding was a bombshell. The company wasn't hiding assets. In fact, it was more than $700,000 in debt to the tax office. Her entire narrative was just falling apart. And the husband's lawyers really hammered this point home. Their argument was basically, hey, judge, we've been here before. This isn't new information. Her claims about needing to investigate his finances had already been brought up in front of other judges, and those judges had already said no. So all of this lands on Justice Campton's desk, and what a tough spot to be in, right? On the one hand, you've got a woman who's representing herself, passionately arguing she's been wronged. And on the other, you have a husband who is just completely worn down, and a justice system that's already stretched to its absolute limit. So to make a call like this, the judge has to use a really important legal tool. It's called the balance of convenience principle. And what that means is, it's not just about what's fair for the person asking for the delay. The judge has to weigh the potential damage of his decision on everyone involved, the wife, the husband, and the public court system as a whole. And this table breaks down the judge's thinking perfectly. Look, if he grants the delay, sure, the wife gets more time to prepare. But at what cost? Another year of legal hell for the husband? More money down the drain? And it clogs up the courts for other people waiting in line. But if he denies the delay, yeah, it's tough on the wife, but the case finally moves forward, and the system can actually function. When you look at it that way, the harm of saying yes was just way too high. And Justice Campton put it perfectly with this powerful line from his judgment. He made it crystal clear that the courts are a public resource, and they are not infinite. No single person, no matter how strongly they believe in their own case, has the right to use up an endless amount of that resource. So, with that big principle guiding him, the judge delivered his verdict. And inside that decision, there are some absolutely crucial lessons for all of us about the real-world limits of fighting for your own personal justice. The big requests from the wife, they were denied. The trial was going ahead, on schedule. No new investigation, no new experts. Her attempt to restart the whole game was shut down. But he did grant two things. He ordered that the money from the sale of their house be frozen, and he ordered the husband to pay $30,000 towards the wife's legal fees. Now, you might be wondering, why the 30 grand? Was the judge siding with her after all? Nope, not at all. This was actually a very pragmatic move to level the playing field. He saw that the husband had money for top-tier lawyers, while the wife had nothing. This payment was to make sure she could at least have a professional lawyer by her side for the final trial, making the fight as fair as it could possibly be under the circumstances. So what are the big takeaways from all this for the rest of us? Well, there are three. First, trying to pull a last-minute ambush in court is a huge, high-risk gamble that almost never pays off. Second, you can't just keep asking the court the same question over and over, hoping for a different answer. And third, choosing to represent yourself doesn't give you a free pass to just ignore the rules of the game. This whole case leaves us with a really fascinating and difficult question. The wife was fighting for what she believed was the truth, and you have to respect that. But the court had to draw a line. It decided that her personal fight was actually causing harm to her husband and to the justice system itself. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? At what point does one person's pursuit of justice become an injustice to everyone else?